Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. On April 6th, at the second Monroe County Election Board meeting of the week, County Clerk Nicole Brown gave an update on early voting.
As of 11:45 today, 134 voters had taken advantage of early and in-person voting at election operations. The total number of ballots that have been requested by mail and were mailed out is 197. Of that number, that 197 number, 25 have been returned to us. And on April 20th, that is the last date that we can accept your application if you want to vote by mail. We have received 2 email requests for overseas ballots that we honored, and both ballots have been returned. I want to make you aware of a couple of dates, or actually several dates. April 13th is the day that travel board begins for confined voters, those voters caring for confined voters at a private residence, or voters who have disabilities. They may vote by absentee mail at the voter's place of residence or their place of confinement. April 14th at noon is the deadline for filing pre-primary campaign finance reports for primary candidates, and this would include unopposed primary candidates in those areas where no primary is conducted. On April 22nd, 2023, and April 29th, 2023, both of those are Saturdays, and there will be early voting on both Saturdays as required by statute, and those are the last 2 Saturdays preceding Election Day. Early voting ends at noon on May 1st, which is the day before primary election day. If you have not voted by noon on May 1st, you will report to your assigned polling site on May 2nd between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
During public comment, local journalist Dave Askins asked if the election board could verify that they received a letter from David Wolf Bender. Brown responded that she had not personally received a letter from Bender. However, she said she did get a letter from the IDS.
What I can say is that shortly before today's meeting, I received an email from an IDS reporter asking if the election board was going to hear or discuss a letter that was issued by Mr. Bender. I searched my electronic mail. I have no correspondence that was received by in my inbox prior to leaving for this meeting. I have been provided a letter. It is the first I am seeing the letter today from, if this is from Mr. Bender, it is the first that I am seeing it, and so I've not had a chance to thoroughly look through it or make any effort to authenticate it. Is that fair?
Both board members, Donovan Garlitz and David Henry, said that they had received a copy from Brown. County Attorney Molly Turner King shared that she received 2 letters that appear to be from Bender and his new lawyer.
And if I may, election board, I received 2 letters this morning, shortly before this meeting. One is from, 2 letters were forwarded to me this morning. One is from, it depicts that it's from Mr. Bender, and another is from an attorney who is now representing Mr. Bender. I can provide both letters to the election board. As an update, since Mr. Bender is now hired a different attorney to represent him, I will send a copy of the letters that the election board has previously signed to that attorney. I know that the election board has not had the opportunity to review these correspondence as everyone has just learned about them. But my suggestion after reading these correspondence is that the election board members that are dealing with the Mr. Bender complaint may want to consider scheduling a meeting to officially receive these letters and then discuss them.
Turner King also announced that the proxy that Henry had assigned to the matter, Guy Loffman, resigned from the appointment.
I know that Mr. Henry had previously appointed a proxy for this matter. As an update, Mr. Loftman has resigned his appointment of proxy, and so Mr. Henry will have to consider if he wants to assign another proxy or not.
Garlitz responded, saying that they should wait to formally receive the letters so that they are able to verify the source of the letters. He also shared with the public that Loftman resigned from being a proxy for logistical reasons.
Quick comment on that. I would just suggest that we perhaps wait until our May meeting to receive anything, because we have no idea as to the authenticity of these. I certainly haven't received anything in my inbox or to my address or via phone, so I have no idea. Certainly not calling anyone in the audience that may have provided this out, but we just don't know where this came from. Second thing, I want to note, and perhaps Mr. Henry is more than welcome to comment on this as well, but Mr. Loftman's resignation was not due to anything. There was nothing tense between anybody, or he didn't think I smelled bad or anything like that. So it was a matter of logistics that it was, he can speak more on it on his own, or if Mr. Henry wants to, but I just wanted to note that there was nothing going on in the background that any of you have to scratch your head about. That's not what took place.
Brown thanked Loftman for his work standing in as proxy.
Thank you.
I do think it's a wonderful opportunity to thank Mr. Loftman for the service that he rendered to the election board in the role of proxy. I found him to be very informative and concise, and I genuinely appreciated the opportunity to work with him, and so thank you, Mr. Loftman.
The election board will meet again the day before the 2023 primary election on Monday, May 1st. During public comment on April 5th at the Monroe County Commissioners meeting, County Assessor Judy Sharp shared her experience responding to the aftermath of recent tornadoes.
I'm Judy Sharp, and ladies, the reason I'm up here today is I wanted to tell you what is happening with the disaster that we just had. You know that part of my job is when there is a disaster, I'm part of the initial response team, believe it or not. Didn't know that was part of the job description, but unfortunately, this is the 5th tornado that we've had to deal with. And so we went out yesterday. We didn't go out on Monday because, Lisa, your highway guys are so great. Of course, Jason's wife works for me, and he says, don't go out on Monday. But we waited a day, and we went out yesterday, not knowing if we could get through, but we did. And we went up to Wolf Mountain, which was the worst damage that we had. I mean, there was more of it. Wolf Mountain was basically wiped off the map on the north side of Wolf Mountain. From the time you went around after you got through all of the trees that were still standing, you kind of went around a little curve, and there's a house there. After that, all the way to County Line Road, there wasn't one structure that was left standing. Why we didn't have deaths, no one will ever figure that out. It's a total miracle. The HT reported on that on Wolf Mountain you had this family that had lived there for years, and they called it Shrimville. And the first place that we could stop that was safe, it was you could tell at one time it was an absolutely beautiful homestead. They even have a pond in the front. Every tree was gone. But we could pull into the drive, and they were working, the couple that lived there, and the friends and family were out starting to clean up. So we got out and introduced myself and told them what we do. And for all of you that don't know what I do, is when this happens, I have the authority to remove things from the tax roll. And we remove it immediately. It's not like you have to wait 10 years to see help. So because you pay a year in arrears, this year they will be paying their taxes for what was there last year. But I'm removing, that's what we're doing downstairs right now. We're removing every structure, house and barns, any structure, off of the property rolls for 23, pay 24. It's about a dozen, maybe a little bit more. I didn't do a quick count before I came up, but what we do is just take it all off. It's called a 137R that I do. It's a disaster relief is what it means. And we will do that and get all of this done. I have to get it done today because tomorrow evening I'm sending all of my data to be downloaded because I have to send my Form 11s in 2-3 weeks. So I've got to get it all done so I can get it to the printers next week. So my staff is under a deadline, but that's what we did. It was really, it's very humbling to see what Mother Nature does. It's these people that lived, this one couple that we got to spoke to, their house was kind of still standing. Kind of, it's going to be gone. But they woke up, they were in bed, and the tornado hit their house. And they were covered in glass. They had glass porch on the front. They had some scratches, but they, who knows why this happens. How the other people, there wasn't anything left of their homes or their cars. The Shrums that we talked to, they'd lived there all their lives, of course. They had over 200 trees that were gone.
Sharp said that if Monroe County residents have any buildings that were torn down by the tornado, they can contact her to receive disaster relief.
I also want the public to understand to call in if I didn't get to you. We're pretty good at finding everything. We've been out to too many of these. We know what to look for now. There was some damage on Texas Ridge. We're taking about 6 places off as Texas Ridge. Wampler Road, I'm terrible with names. The people that live on Wampler, it might even be Wampler, they have 2 humongous barns and 100 feet barns. He lost a whole roof on one of the barns. But anyway, so we're helping them out. We will be sending information to all the people, but please, out there, anyone that has had major storm damage, I just can't help you can't help on trees or anything like that, but on structures we can sure help.
Next, County Attorney Jeff Cockerell presented an ordinance to approve an agreement with DLZ LLC. The agreement includes an initial site review and evaluation.
Yes, I think I'm going to start with what this isn't, because I think last week you guys approved to go ahead and start negotiations for a master plan kind of attitude with DLZ. This is not that. This is much more akin to what we did when we were looking at Fullerton, where we had an agreement with DLZ to do some of the site inspection and site reviews. More to get a feel for what we could potentially put on property and what are the potential things we need to look at as we move forward with site selection. We don't have any sites that we are going to start and say, hey, this is where we're going to do this work. This is just to prepare us for as we move forward. Once we get a couple sites or up to 4, and the up to 4 is based upon wanting to remain under $10,000 from a budgetary perspective. So if we come up with more, we'll have to amend the contract, but we thought 4 would be a good number to start with. And so working with the commissioners and of course the county council and trying to determine what sites to select. This is for the work that when we select a site, we look at it and we look at the zoning, we look at size issues, we look at buildable areas, those kind of things, to get a better feel on some of the things. I know that this county council I know the county council approved a memo that says things like at a location as close to existing surfaces as possible. That as possible can be interpreted a lot of different ways, and and they also ask for additional data on the sizing in that, and so hopefully as we look at specific sites we can answer some of those questions.
The commissioners approved the agreement unanimously. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.
Welcome back to CATSweek. At the Bloomington City Council meeting on April 4th, Planning Services Manager Ryan Roebling gave a 2023 Comprehensive Plan Tracking Report. Roebling outlined the comprehensive plan's main objectives.
So the comprehensive plan is the City of Bloomington's long-range plan for all aspects of land use planning, including development and transportation. It describes the community's vision for the future. Additionally, the comprehensive plan establishes goals for which the city seeks to achieve over the life cycle of the plan. This current plan, adopted in 2018, is expected to live on in some fashion until 2040. So with the goals identified in the plan come policies and outcomes which are identified incremental steps along the path to achieving those goals. Each outcome identified in the plan has indicators that act as a progress report to help determine if the city is on track.
Roebling also shared statistics on the demographics in the downtown area.
So there's a demographic profile of residential units in the downtown overlay district. You can see that the people who live in downtown are relatively young, relatively diverse, have a median household income of roughly $14,000, and they live in homes that are roughly $330,000. You can see an average commute time matches roughly what's projected for the entire city, and yeah. And they're equally male and female identifying.
Roebling shared that based off of a survey they conducted with 35,222 participants, the average Bloomington resident spends 144 hours per year commuting to work.
So per year, the average Bloomingtonian spends 144 hours in traffic commuting. That's 16.7 minutes each way from home to work. Or from home to work and work to home, and 260 days of work. All right, so the number of fatalities and incapacitating injuries, I'll note that this, there's a copy and paste error in your packet. This is the adjusted numbers. Those have been included online. You can see that there is a steady decrease in the last 3 years. I believe 2019 was the last reported year previously, and so this extends that. You can see that there's an increase in fatalities. This is for Monroe County, not just Bloomington, but there's been a number of an increase in the number of fatalities. Crash rates for people walking and bicycling, you can see that it's roughly staying steady. It did drop 2019 and 2020, and saw a rise again.
Council member Isabel Piedmont Smith asked for clarification on the amount of waste diverted from the landfills. Roebling said that the Department of Public Works reported that the amount of trash pickup has increased since the pandemic. However, the amount of yard waste has decreased.
So what I'm seeing here is that whereas in 2018, 39% of the waste was diverted from the landfill, whereas in 2022, only 30% was. So that is a negative trend, and I would like to know more about, is this just what the city picks up as far as the city services for residential units with 4 or fewer units, residential buildings with 4 or fewer units, or what does that reflect?
So yes, this reflects all waste that headed towards the landfill during those years. The number is actually misleading. I probably should have just presented on this, but it's not from planning, so I don't propose to be an expert. But I have a quick thing from them. It says, since the 2018 amount of both solid waste and recycling have increased approximately 15% annually. This is due to the addition of areas within the city that have collected, in addition to continued education and encouragement of recycling. Since 2020 and the onset of COVID, more people have been working and eating at home, and resulting in a much higher collection of both solid and waste recycling. In addition, the city's transition to mulching in place and the discontinuation of curbside leaf program have been resulted in less yard waste. All in all, the changes are proportional to the amount of material being collected. That's from DPW staff themselves. I'm sorry. I can forward that on to you.
Well, what you just said sounds like the percentage of waste diverted would increase, but what we see here on the chart is that it actually decreased, so I'm a little confused.
The number is increasing roughly 15% annually, regardless of the decreases, and then the amount that is being formerly would have been diverted away from the landfill, yard waste, et cetera, is now being used on site, so that's lowering that number even more. Sorry.
Next, the council voted on an ordinance to appropriate the current balance of the opioid settlement fund to help address the impacts of the opioid crisis on city and county residents. Corporation Counsel Beth Kate explained the appropriation.
As you may recall, the City of Bloomington is participating in national settlements which have been negotiated by the state of Indiana and various other states just about a little over a year ago. We opted into the first of these settlements with a manufacturer and several distributors, and that has produced some settlement payments which began in late 2022 and will continue out through 2038, actually. So we received in late 2022 payments into two separate funds. One is an unrestricted fund, and one is restricted under state law. About 70% of the money we receive is restricted in its use to a variety of uses involving opioid treatment and other forms of assistance that are kind of under the broad heading of abatement. And it's a broad list, but the funds need to go for things within that broad list. And then about 30% of the funds are unrestricted. And so what you're seeing in Appropriation Ordinance 2303 is the combined total of the 2022 payments into those two funds, restricted and unrestricted. And what the app board is asking is that you appropriate those funds and only those funds, so only the 2022 payments from that settlement, toward the programs that Ms. Callender Anderson is going to describe.
Director of Community and Family Resources, Beverly Callender Anderson, explained what the funds would be used for.
And as you may know, each year CFRD coordinates the Downtown Outreach Grant, which provides funding for nonprofit agencies that support Bloomington's unhoused residents or those in danger of becoming homeless. This investment of funds into local nonprofits has resulted in outreach staff who work with their agencies and in collaboration with the city to assure that residents who are living on the streets excuse me, are receiving needed services, including health care, and that they are aware of the resources such as payment for transportation for those who have come from out of town to go back to their home communities, as well as case management, navigator services, syringe disposal boxes, and the like. In 2023, the Downtown Outreach Grant Cycle, during that outreach grant cycle, the request total was $544,771. That's more than double the $250,000 we had allocated for that purpose. The Grant Selection Committee evaluated each grant and finally got the number whittled down to $320,660, which was still $70,500 more than available. The committee felt further cuts would not allow enough funding for even partial services to be provided by many of the agencies. Additionally, the city and the county have collaborated on a matching grant through the Family Social Service Administration to address substance use disorder in Monroe County. The city's portion of the match is $100,000, which will include a naloxone supply and education program, drug, medication, and syringe disposal units, along with educational resources for the proper disposal of medication and syringes. In order to collaborate with county government on its upcoming programs addressing substance use disorder, and to make the Downtown Outreach Grant Committee's recommended total of $320,660 for local agencies, we request and recommend the council approve this appropriation. $170,500 of this total has already been outlined. The remaining funds will be maintained by CFRD to be used to address similar community needs consistent with the types of abatement expenditures approved by the settlement document and state law.
The council voted to approve the appropriation ordinance unanimously. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Community Justice Response Committee met on April 3rd. During public comment, Monroe County resident Audrey Williams shared her concern that the commissioners have not been transparent in their discussions surrounding the architecture firm chosen to design the jail.
So your last meeting, somebody brought up by public comment that you all had violated the open door law by not talking about the RFQs in public. And so I went through the handbook on Indiana public access laws, and on page 8, there is actually a very specific example that is given exactly in this. And so it should actually be in public, and if you all are not interested in following state law, I'm not entirely sure what we are doing here. As I mentioned in my comment last meeting, if the concern of this committee is what happens to this committee and what happens to this county if we choose to do nothing for the next year, and if you aren't following state law when you are trying to get this process and shove through something that you want done, then what is it that you are trying to do? Because you do not seem interested in this committee. You don't seem interested in public comment. There are many things that people have been saying over and over and over again that you all are not listening to. People have asked for city involvement. People have asked you to listen to members of these committees, and it's just not happening. And I do not know what you all are doing. You're not following state law. You are not doing what the ACLU is asking. You are just plowing ahead with what you want. And I do not know, why do you even bother having these meetings? Because nothing seems to matter. And that's really all I have to say.
Later, the Monroe County Commissioners asked to meet with Sheriff Ruben Marte at a work session to discuss an email he sent to them asking for complete transparency. Commissioner Penny Githens said she would consider Council Member Jennifer Crossley's suggestion to further discuss his email at the next CJRC meeting on April 17th. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.